touch, innovations here. Let's take flight tech, we know a new world. We're getting closer. Don't hold back now. Let's ignite our minds under the lights. Feel the future's touch, innovations here. Let's take flight tech, we know a new world. We're getting closer. Don't hold back now. Let's ignite our minds under the lights. Feel the future's touch, innovations here. Let's take flight tech, we know a new world. We're getting closer. Don't hold back now. Let's ignite our minds under the lights. Feel the future's touch, innovations here. Let's take flight tech, we know a new world. We're getting closer. Don't hold back now.
One more minute. Please come in, take a seat. We will start in 1 minute at the latest. There was still some people at breakfast, but we'll start anyway. Okay, please grab a seat. We will start now. So, yeah. Okay, welcome to the beautiful city of Prague for another ETIS gathering. We are very happy to have over 200 people physically attending the gathering. We also have for the common session now over 150 people attending virtually. So also a warm welcome to the people attending the streaming session. It was not very easy to hear it, but just to kick it off, yeah, perhaps I can also introduce myself for the people not knowing me. I'm Wim de Meyer, Managing Director of ETIS, the community of telecom professionals in Europe. And so, as I've said, I was going to make a comment on the music you may have heard. In fact, the music was generated by an AI app, audio.com. And I just gave as a prompt, please generate a song to open a gathering on AI, a conference on AI. And for the ones who were listening to it, I think the model was trained with U2 and The Cure. So I hope they have the rights to use the music of U2 and The Cure. But you can even see it was generated in 5 minutes, and even if you say, if you look at the lyrics, it's about innovation, it's about taking the next step, not holding back now. And so that's also what we want to do during the two-day event. We will now kick it off with the common session. Paul, our chairman, will take the floor in a second. We're very happy to have then Elisa as partner, and Jukka-Pekka will bring the Elisa journey. We also are very happy that Lenovo+Intel is again a diamond sponsor, and they will give their view and what they have learned from their collaboration with telecom operators related to the different flavors of AI. We're also very happy to have a local partner here in Czechia. So we have Michal Kubista from O2 Czech Republic, who will demystify the AI Act. Also important to see what we can and cannot do with AI in Europe. And we will conclude the presentations with the view of an AI analyst, Charlotte Patrick, an independent AI analyst. And she will present you a model operators can use to see where the low-hanging fruits are in AI and the less evident or obvious things to do with AI in a telecom environment. And we will also end then the session with a roundtable Q&A. So if you have questions, please keep them prepared for the Q&A session. So then here already a glimpse of who you will see the next 2 hours. But I would like now to give the floor to our chairman, the chairman of ETIS, who is also Executive Vice President Infrastructure at KPN.
Thank you, Wim. It's always an honor to stand here together with you to be able to open the gathering. And I was telling some people yesterday evening a little story about my experience, like you just showed your beautiful song that almost nobody could hear, but maybe in the break you have to play it again. But I did the same and uploaded it to Spotify, but now I'm banned from Spotify for infringing copyrights, so hey. So there's still some stuff to be fixed there. Yeah, let's talk about AI. And maybe some interesting quotes. AI is a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization. Who knows from whom that quote is? Nobody? Oh, the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of a human race. Wow. Yeah, there you go. So if one person is investing in AI, it's Musk. But if you then think about his quotes, okay. So it will be interesting. I guess we're going to have a lot of interesting discussions here to date. And there we go. Let me just see. It's just a green button, I guess. There we go. Yeah, AI. What is AI about? Just look at this one. Will AI change the world? Now, it's great to be here in Prague. It's a beautiful city, ancient city, a lot of old buildings, a lot of history. And you can also see, if you walk to the center and you ignore the antennas on the roofs, you can actually see that, yeah, technology maybe doesn't change so much in an ancient city. And yeah, this is an interesting quote, huh? Hey, ChatGPT, finish this building. Now, they're not going to finish the building, that's for sure. But yeah, AI will do a lot of other things. And AI will also bring a lot of questions. A friend of mine is working in the transport industry. And he told me last week that transport industry is changing rapidly. He's actually seeing that the ones who are transporting packages from all over the world, mostly China to Europe, in my case to the Netherlands, are losing market share rapidly. And that's because of a new player. Maybe you've heard of it, Temu. It's a nice app, and you can very cheap order all kind of stuff. But the intelligence behind it is the usage of artificial intelligence. If you now would go to a retail shop and tell them, we will change your stock every 6 weeks based on AI, based on how we're looking at social media and what's happening there, we will redefine our stock every 6 weeks. Physically, that would almost be impossible. But yeah, if you add AI and if you add a mass market, it is possible, and it's changing a complete market today. So a lot is happening. And yes, if you think about that, there are also questions. There is the fear of job displacement. And that's a fear that has always been there with every new technology that came abroad. And of course, there's also the fear of loss of human control. What is AI going to do? And there are questions about ethical and moral implications. And maybe there are other existential risks. And we're going to probably hear more about that with some of the speakers later in the program. But at the same time, it's a new technology, and new technology also brings chances, and I think it's good to keep that in mind. And it will change our industry, and it will change the things we are doing here today. And therefore, it's great to be here together with so many people. And as ETIS, we're proud that we're growing. We're proud that we have new members. Also here today, I think in total we have 8 new members. Now let me mention them. It's Postlux, Sunrise, Elisa, Vodafone, Telia, LMT, Telenet, Telefonica Germany. Please give them a warm welcome, because by growth, they keep our community in a healthy state. And we're also supported by partners, as we call them. And also here today, we have some new partners. But especially this gathering is supported by Lenovo, Elisa, Intel, and ComArch. So without them, your fee entry ticket would probably have been, there would have been an entry ticket. Yeah, now, and it's not about the members only, it's not about the supporting parties, because it's about the knowledge that we're sharing. And yeah, together we used to have 18 working groups. I think after today we're going to have 20 in total. One working group stopped, but there are 3 new ones. You see the CSRD. I guess a lot of you are working on CSRD, are working on the, I see people nodding. But yeah, that's an awful lot of work, and it's good to share our experience on CSRD. And the other one is security awareness. We've got a couple of beautiful, very effective working groups around security, but we also started to think about how can we create awareness in our organizations with our colleagues, and that's what the security awareness work group is all about. They started off a couple of months ago, and I think it's already very effective with a lot of memberships in it. So that's good to see. And there were also two more that are actually going to start here today. That's the compliance work group, compliancy. Maybe it relates a bit to CSRD, it relates to awareness, but it's compliance in a broader sense. You have your regulation, a lot of things happening there as well in the European market. And then the latter one, yeah, where would we be if we wouldn't be having a work group on AI? We asked ChatGPT, which work group are we missing? They said it's the AI and data analytics. In my notes I said data analytics and AI, but Wim told me no, it's the other way around. It's AI and AIDA. AIDA. So yeah, very healthy situation that we're in, and these are all 20. And yeah, I think the most important part of why we're here today and tomorrow is actually the exchange of experience, of knowledge in our working groups, which is going to start at the end of the morning. We're here with more than, now I think 225 people registered for the event to be here today. A lot of people will also be online, especially here in the common session, as Wim told you earlier on. And it's also good to see that we have representation from 36 operators. So that's quite a lot. If you just imagine Europe, 36 operators all here, I think that's great. And that's a great start for a great event. And I only can close my quick welcome by wishing you a great event, enjoy it, share your knowledge, and learn. Have a great event.
Okay, before giving the floor to the keynote speakers, I think it's good to give some personal thoughts also on AI. AI has many flavors, you see that on the right, and you have a lot of things being a subset of the thing on top on the slide. So obviously generative AI has taken the stage end of 2022 and have caused a lot of traction and momentum in all industries. But is AI really the next big thing? The telecom sector is looking for the next big thing for a while now. But I think AI looks at least very promising. But it's also good to bear in mind that you have a thing like the Gartner hype cycle, where a new technology first creates a lot of high expectations, which are not met, and then you have a period of disappointment. But in the end, all is good, and you come to a kind of a stable, productive phase. Well, AI is not following that trend, because AI was already launched in the 50s and the 60s, and the first so-called AI winter was there already in the 70s. Then there was a new momentum, which started in the 80s. The second AI boom started, and guess what? Another winter was coming. So we had the second AI winter. And now we're in a third booming phase with a lot of different developments, from Deep Blue beating Kasparov up to the launch of Gen AI, with a lot of intermediate successes in between. But so it's good to know now, what do you think? Do you think that AI is not the next big thing and the bubble will burst? Will excitement fade, but will some applications still be successful? Or is it really the next industrial revolution? It's depicted a bit more like here. I only found two pictures, one for the next big thing, so the very positive trend and the explosive growth. Everybody knows the one at the bottom, winter is coming. So are we in for the third AI winter? Or will we move to somewhere in between? The excitement will start to fade, but there will be also applications continuing to use AI. So the audience here, but also online, can now scan the QR code and let us know what you think. There is one person who thinks that the bubble will burst, I think. Can we go back to the results? You want to see the, yeah. For the ones not, who were not able to scan the QR code, perhaps we can have another go. And the result is, okay, good to see. So there is a slight preference for pragmatism. So there will be AI applications which are here to stay. But you also see that almost half of the audience think that we are going to enter the next industrial revolution. I think the 3% of the people, probably they can leave the session for the next 2 hours, so they can grab a coffee. But so, all jokes aside, I would like now to introduce the first speaker, which is Jukka-Pekka from Elisa. Elisa is a front runner in a lot of technologies, a lot of developments, and so we're very happy to have his view on AI and the developments at Elisa. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Wim. Good morning, everyone. I did a bit different presentation, mostly going through the past 5-10 years of old slides and picking some favorites from that. Since I'm starting from the past, like how Elisa became active in this area, then coming for the recent years, what kind of activities have been going, and then ending towards the new revenue streams, both for Elisa and we believe it's kind of much wider telecom opportunity as well. To understand Elisa's background, why we have been involved, it actually goes for the different business decision roughly 15 years ago. Against all consultant advice, and consultants need to have opinions, they were all advising against. We went for the unlimited everything, speed tires, no data transfer quotas, business models 15 years ago. And the consultant advice was that this is plain crazy. You will never be able to serve the explosive traffic growth, and you will be ruining your business. The explosive traffic growth did happen, but what happened at the same time that our production organization took the business challenge seriously, and they started to reinvent step by step how we actually operate the networks. And whether it's skill, luck, or probably combination of both, we managed to stay on the right wave. It was the highest traffic growth anywhere in the planet, what we were seeing in our networks. But we were keeping the capex level very low, stable. So that has been the 12%, and it has been for the past 15 years that level. So it's below industry average. So we have not been overcompensating by putting more hardware. It has been we need to operate the hardware more effectively. So that was the origin. It started with rethinking how we collect all the data from the different network elements, and instead of managing like the network from the hardware perspective, that we look like end-to-end service levels and optimize for that. It started with like putting that data layer, doing like our own integration across the windows in that area, and then it started to be like more like heuristic-based optimization, both on the radio network optimization side and service assurance, and later on other areas, including like capacity management and how we are like building up the network extensions and so on. It started with this like human expert heuristics, and then it became like more and more sophisticated as we had to like push the boundaries all the time. And all in all, this is roughly 15 years development, where the last half or a bit more has been like more and more AI driven. So from that perspective, like it was the business decision first, and then like it was the necessity to push ourselves, and that was like putting like the pressure and opportunity, really like think about what we can achieve by better leveraging the data. And this is a kind of the example about how we were like structuring around the OSS side. So like what are the processes around managing and operating the networks, like half a decade old snapshot. But in that area we had the most AI ML use cases around the optimization side, and then the second hotspot was around the monitoring and control, and from that for the preventive maintenance, correcting the problems kind of items. So on the optimization nowadays, like better known as like season kind of capabilities, and then on the service assurance side, more like this virtual NOC or dark NOC network operating center, like fully automatizing big parts of that. But this was still like the thinking that we need to have a lot of like focus in some parts of the overall organization, so that we can kind of have the critical mass of people and get like the learnings and so on, and this like very network centric perspective was dominating. And if we move from that, like this was mostly now done in the network centric thinking, but some lessons started to emerge, and this was before the TechCo was a fashionable term. So I just added that for the like title here, because I think this is very much related for this TechCo capability. Like one learning we got pretty early on, that if you try to mix like traditional domain experts and then AI and software people, it can be a bit like oil and water, unless you actually try to like really build in so that the teams responsible of the area themselves see and perceive the need and build partly the core capabilities to the team. So like for us, the most successful ways of organizing have been partly so that big parts of the production organization, they have been like retraining themselves, even like doing like software programming, internal like academies, learning Python programming, developing the best practices in that area. And from that perspective, like for example, traditional network engineers typically are reasonable skilled Python programmers as well. It doesn't mean that they would be professional Python programmers, but they are like decently skilled in that area. And then we typically inject then software professionals on the same teams as well, so that it's not so that the software development is happening somewhere and AI development is happening somewhere, and then the domain expert responsible, for example, for run optimization would be in the third organization, but more so that we build like a joint team that has all these core capabilities, partly upskilling the people themselves and partly by injecting like extra specialists in the same area. And then there's like a slightly different nuance here, that in the very best cases, or if I start from the negative side, sometimes you have great ideas for the AI ML development, the proof of concept works just fine, and then absolutely nothing happens. And when you go and analyze that, like what is then like the bottleneck between the POC and actually getting into the production? It's very often so that the processes, both the human processes and the technical processes, they have been designed for the non-AI, non-ML approach. So they have been designed and they are implemented from the technical sense to be based on this like human intelligence and human processes. And if you do the POC for this, for example, we could be doing better decisions, let's say for radio antenna tilt optimization. You can do the POC for that, and you can demonstrate that with the AI/ML model, it's doing better decisions for that than any of the human experts are able to do. Well, we actually have done that as well, so real case from that perspective. But then, like, unless you are also changing that, well, how are then the tilt angles set and how they are adjusted over time and like how in the overall setup, unless you are addressing that process perspective, the proof point from the technical side that we can do this decision better with machine intelligence compared to the human intelligence is not enough. And for us, the best cases have been when the reasonable small empowered team is also responsible of designing the process. And if I take the extreme case here, how years ago our centralized SON started, we had the radio network experts in that area, and then Juho, who was like one of the key people in that area, was discussing with our production leadership team that, hey, there's this closed loop optimization thinking for this and this radio network optimization item. And then the question came that, well, can it like really work in the closed loop and so on? And Juho was then provided the opportunity to actually run from his own laptop for a few days, the closed loop optimization to show that the principle is actually working. And when that principle was demonstrated, let's not tell anyone that we were running like the radio network settings from someone's laptop for a few days and adjusting those in the closed loop sense. But then like when the principle was demonstrated in that area, then it was like pushed forward that, hey, like please like design how this whole closed loop system should be. And it was the same network engineers responsible of designing that process perspective and allowing to say how it is done and like setting up the infrastructure for that side. And this combination that we have like from the skills and capabilities, like the enough of the software and AI thing, then we need to have the domain experts like really blended in, and then that empowered team being able to also like redesign the processes. Like I think in all of our best cases, all these three angles have been like working together. And for many of the failure cases where it kind of gets stuck somewhere in the POC stage, like usually one of these areas is like really the weak link. Either the domain experts and AI/ML not really like connecting with each other, or like the process changes being the bottleneck. And with that in mind, it started very like operator-centric. We are primarily mobile operator. We were enhancing how effectively we are able to operate the mobile infrastructure. But then over the years, there have been many areas where we first have started to implement, and then in some cases by organic growth, in some cases organic growth boosted by acquisitions, we have been like spreading out the activities. With the same kind of thinking that there's like certain things that you need to do well for the AI/ML development to deliver the results, but you can have many different application areas. So on the industrial software, nowadays we are doing a significant part of the quality control systems for the global semiconductor industry. It's pretty far away from the telco core, but it's definitely heavily related on the better data utilization, end-to-end understanding of like what are causing the quality differences, and then like helping the customers better act on the data. So from that perspective, at the abstract level, it's actually pretty similar case like end-to-end optimization of the radio networks. The domain just happens to be totally different. And then on the more closer to the telco area, like cybersecurity, full of these kind of like data-intensive situation where you have like a race against the bad guys and good guys, like who is able to like detect the different attacks better. And then what I didn't discuss here is like the BSS and customer service side. That is definitely one like large open area for better utilization of all these emerging AI ML techniques as well. But now I will take as like one example, also looking for this like future growth perspective from this renewable energy side. And the background goes before the energy crisis time, so 22 was the strange year. From the energy perspective, this was like in the early 21. The background at that point of time that my team had been doing quite extensive work on the using ML to optimize the energy consumption of the radio networks, like which bands can be shut down and how you optimize like in the local area, like which base stations need to be serving which traffic and so on. So that was like what we had been working for years, and then the feeling was that, hey, in this area, like, could we do something more? And then one of these something more was that, like, let's look like forward, what's happening in the energy, and like we should be getting into zero carbon energy at the whole humankind level, not only at the company level. And for that, the good news is that we already have very inexpensive solar production, very inexpensive wind production, and from that perspective, getting rid of fossil fuels is definitely economically viable. Then comes the but. With the wind and solar, the production is very volatile and difficult to control. And the electricity grid needs to be balanced every single second. The total production and total consumption need to be matching, otherwise the frequency of the grid starts to drift one direction or the other, and if it drifts enough, then bad things start to happen. And from that perspective came like the thinking that if for the future, this is like the really big challenge in any house, like can we contribute then from our infrastructure perspective? Can we build this kind of flexibility to our system that it would allow better control of the energy grid when the production is dominated by the wind and solar? And at the same time, the wind production in Finland has been skyrocketing. It's now like in the windy times, it's the dominant form. We also have like quite significant hydro and nuclear, but like wind is the growing part, and we have been pretty much getting rid of the fossil fuels, which is the excellent news. So then came this like that, hey, from our infrastructure, if we upgrade from technology and capacity perspective the batteries that we have in the run sites to more modern lithium-ion, then we have in principle the flexibility available, because we can use that extended battery capacity to buffer when we take the energy from the grid to the battery. So sometimes we can like take extra energy in, for example, if there's inexpensive wind power available in the night hours, we can take extra energy in for the batteries, and then on other times, for example, when it is expensive during the day or evening peak, instead of using the energy from the grid, we can take from the batteries. And we push the thinking here to the side that, hey, like we should be able to control these thousands units every second by second. Like they are all slightly different capacities, slightly different consumption profiles and so on, but the AI ML part can take care of that complexity. We can adjust, and we do adjust like every second the total effect what our radio network is consuming towards the grid. Sometimes it's more than what the radios are consuming, sometimes it's less what the radios is consuming. We are using the batteries here. And then the second part here is that the value of this flexibility depends on the situation on the energy markets. There are many different like energy market products, how the transmission system operators who have the responsibility of keeping the energy grid in balance, so matching this production and consumption. They have defined very many different specialized products, like how they can then keep this balance in place. And that's the part where we are integrating on the energy market side. And we are doing every day the simulation of the current energy market conditions and doing the optimal bidding across these different products and across different time frames so that we are getting the best economic payout from this flexibility capacity that we have built in our radio network asset. And from this perspective, traditionally, energy consumption was just a cost item, something you couldn't avoid. And in most of Western countries, the telcos consume from 1% to 3% of the national energy load. So it's like pretty significant part. And now what we are changing the system here, instead of being just utilizing the grid, we are helping the grid be more renewable based, and we are doing that while making money for ourselves as well. So this is a positive investment business case, not some kind of like, hey, for sustainable charity kind of something. This is like about making money in a way that makes the planet better. And then looking forward, like our style is that it's better to eat own dog food or drink own champagne or whatever. So we started from our own infrastructure. But of course, Elisa's radio networks are only like roughly 1% of the European radio networks. So from the European impact perspective, what we do with our own infrastructure in Finland is like pretty tiny part of the overall item. And now we have been engaging and well, keep on engaging with many of you to like find out the best ways how we can like spread out these innovations for the others. And here like Telenor was the first one that was announced in February that we joined forces and will be like operating this flexibility capacity also in Telenor infrastructure. But then moving beyond here, and I think this is like the really like the unlocking new revenue streams. This is something that what is changing in the energy infrastructure. It's going from this fossil era with very big plants into much more distributed, millions of solar panels, some of those with batteries, both like residential customers, but it will be the commercial customers, industrial premises, and so on. And all of this like hugely distributed setup would need to be working intelligently. And we believe that's an operator role. It just not happens to be operating mobile networks or communication networks. It's operating a hugely distributed system that should be working more intelligently than before. And that's where now we are like working not only on the telco segment, but on the residential, commercial, and industrial, and so on items, and seeing that like how we can contribute from our perspective. Thanks, and if interested in the Finnish learnings like from this DS, there's a white paper that has some numbers of the market situation and the returns from the first year or so of the operations.
Okay. Thank you, Jukka-Pekka. I think Elisa is a front runner in a lot of things, and thanks for giving a glimpse behind the scenes. I think AI is also being hyped, as we know. For the ones who were at the Mobile World Congress, there wasn't one booth where AI was not mentioned, but it's also good to see what is behind the scenes and what's really happening. We will also see how operators can look at it with Charlotte in a while. But now I'm happy to present Jorge to the stage. So we're happy that Lenovo is again a diamond sponsor. They will sponsor our dinner tonight. So good to know. But besides that, they also work with all of you, and they have learned a lot while working with you, and so it's very good to hear their vision on how AI can shape the future of the telecom.
Thank you, Wim. Thank you, everyone, and good morning to all. So I take a few of the words already that were mentioned, so we certainly are here to learn and to share our knowledge. And yes, so with that, we wanted to present you with some of our findings and what are we seeing in our engagements with telco operators and what we are actually trying to deliver to them. So essentially, we start from the need of digital transformation is been going on for some time. We have several interests that are the drivers. So those key drivers are, as we know, so it's time to market, revenue streams. We need to have business excellence, and so there are several of them that just become so important. But then there are some that actually come to mind as with a really paramount importance, such as security. And of course, to be mentioned here is sustainability, which has to be also top of mind. So knowing all of these and knowing all of these motivations that we have, so we start to see new technologies. I don't know why this slide is not. Okay, anyways. So here we go. There we go. Now it works. So we need to see what are the tools that we have. So we saw the drivers, we saw the motivations, and we start to see what the tools that we have and the tools that we can use in order to actually make this happen. So those tools are of course, AI and ML-driven tools. So we can talk about, what our environments looked like before. Just, let's take, cast our minds 5 years ago or so. We can actually see that our environments, home environments, office environments, work environments, etc., public environments would have had a lot less data. So now data is just more and more, and there are more volumes of data. So what do we want to actually do with that data is quite important, and how we have our architectures that actually can make best use of that data. So we're saying that the tools are AI and ML driven, so that is definitely a good thing. That it goes cloud native. So the key point here is so moving from appliances-based to API-based, meaning that applications can start to talk, and essentially, ultimately, we can deploy those applications when they are needed and where they are needed. So that again becomes one of the main premises. And with that data-centric approach and looking at things that can help us achieve essentially being autonomous, and that our networks become autonomous. So we had a webinar that was run, so thanks to ETIS that put together a webinar for us. So Intel and Lenovo, we have been working together on this. And we had one of our questions was a very similar question. So are you deploying mainly AI on internal use or customer projects? And here the key fact was that we saw that essentially you get the 50-50 mix between internal and customer projects as the most relevant answer. But then you also have comparing that data with publicly available information. Again, so 54% believe that Gen AI will increase revenues. And for sure that can be something that will be seen. But we have to see if those new revenues can be generated and can be essentially made real, right? So with that, we see two main pillars that are actually, just to simplify the concept, we see AI for telcos and AI that telcos can resell or telcos can provide. So these are the two pillars that we actually have been working through, and that we are learning that they fall into these categories. So network optimization, business optimization, customer experience, super important one. And they come as a need for the telcos. So if the telcos improve on that, they're improving on themselves and they can provide a better service. However, there is the other stream, which is the B2B stream, right? So how the telcos can actually create new revenues. We think that there is an opportunity to capitalize on B2B and actually for the telcos to be the providers, right? So we want to show you, this is a small video of a proof of concept that we've made with Telefónica Spain. So this is in the lab, in the global CTIO lab. So this is the innovation lab. And I'll tell you the story. So the main point is that they asked us to see that in a multi-cloud environment, so several servers, totally agnostic to the OS, that we could essentially move the applications where the users were present or where the application was needed. So what we did was to deploy it on mission critical, because we know that, for example, firefighters, and it's an essential need for all of us. And using AI, we used inferencing, so cameras recognizing fire and smoke would be able to trigger an alarm to an orchestrator, and this orchestrator would be able to deploy the application exactly where the emergency was happening. Of course, this was done in a lab environment, but we proved that the application followed and went where it was needed. So the actual reason behind this is that, of course, we proved the technology. Of course, there were several aspects of it that were technical and that we were happy to have achieved. But the key fact is that the firefighters can be any enterprise, and the application can be any application. So then we start to think, okay, so if this is real and if this is possible, so this could be an airport, this could be a shopping mall, this could be a stadium environment that, maybe next week is empty, but this weekend there is an event there and they need certain application. So here's where it comes, just as an idea, for example, the B2B possibility for the telcos to actually provide a subscription service to that ISV that may want to supply that application at that moment, and etc. So these are the things that we see that can be the new revenue streams, perhaps, or like Jukka was mentioning for industry. So there are several enterprises that would need new services. So with that, we see that essentially the point there, it evolves into generative AI. So what in the businesses environments, what is needed, right? So yes, there is ChatGPT. Yes, there are several things that are automated and assisted, and that we can enhance the experience. So this can be the new revenue streams. So going back to what we said could be the two pillars is AI for telcos that improves the AI or the networks of the telco through AI, and then the new revenue streams that can improve certain things that can be exploited as new revenue. So with that, this is one point that we've been essentially seeing and discussing. There are several places where the telco can be positioned themselves, right? They can be the connectivity provider, they can be the service creators, they can be the service enabler, or they can be the ecosystem enabler. And we think that the more there is, the more the telco goes towards that ecosystem enabler, the stronger position it would have in terms of addressable revenue. And I think this is true to many things in life. The more effort we put on something, probably the best results we will get. And the thing is, we can see that the ecosystem enablers are probably the ones that are going to go very, very deep into creating that partnership with software and hardware vendors, creating the ecosystem, implementing new, I mean, of course, there are going to be applications that will demand that, markets that will demand that, and others, other telcos that would say, okay, so that's not our space. We may not want to be specifically there, but we may want to be in another position where we are able to create on demand, whether that need comes to us. Perhaps it would go back to the previous question, are you deploying AI for your customers? So when you are asked for something, you deploy it, or are you actually creating it and then creating that ecosystem? So this is basically one thing that we've been discussing and trying to learn, and certainly we see it as a very important point. Where is the telco or CSP positioning in terms of creating that and being able to be on either side, on the connectivity provider side or on the ecosystem enabler side? So with that, we were also, of course, during our learnings, identifying what can be those values. So pretty much, we say and see, and I think we're going to continue to learn more on this, but we are already learning, like the examples of network optimization, the examples of improving the customer experience, the example, all of them are AI for telco. So I was just seeing and thinking, even if the AI bubble bursts and essentially we have a winter and so on, the point there could be that this still can provide us with some benefits, right? So it's still essentially good to have these improvements in the network to be more efficient, more lean, and essential sustainability benefits that we can gain. More to that, then there are the direct revenues, which we've spoken about, and certainly I look forward to hear from you what use cases and what more can be created in terms of having that. So on that value chain, we see that the ecosystem enabler will have vendors, AI partners, AI software, solution partners, strategic alliances, etc. But then there will be on the other side, so there will be the telcos that are essentially improving their own operations. So one thing we'd like to also mention, and we think that for sure is on everybody's minds, is the hyperscalers and their position compared to the telcos. So of course there are a lot of things that are already deployed in the hyperscalers environments, but what we think is that perhaps there can be a hybrid strategy or a strategy that depends on the workloads. And for many reasons that we see that are strong for the telcos, such as the trust that we have in telcos, such as having the telcos already having this rich data resources. So essentially, we all have got mobile devices. We're all generating data. The capillarity of the mobile networks is totally different to the hyperscalers. For sure, we understand that the hyperscalers will have a role, but we also think that the telcos are strongly positioned to actually be one of the main enablers for AI, should they be going in that direction, like we saw before on the ecosystem enabler direction. So looking at that, we actually had, of course, done some research, and we were looking at other markets. Specifically, we looked at a non-European market to set some examples of that and to actually see what were they doing in order to achieve that, and what is their strategy. And we saw some examples that were really coming to provide that ecosystem enabler point. So, for example, when we see Geo or NTT, SoftBank, and we see AI platforms as a service. So this was actually the point we were trying to prove when we did the POC with Telefónica Spain, that AI can be used as a service, so the telco can deliver certain AI applications as a service. AI factories, so they're very much something that if we think about the factories as an enterprise, would they go alone, or would they actually trust to have a partner such as a telco to deliver that, especially in some deployments that could be a long-term strategy, so not only for the short term, but for the long term. Then we see other examples that actually are more into so when we say the connectivity providers, so we start to look at this and we start to see, okay, so these are actually the examples and how to achieve what we are mentioning. So we're mentioning that the telcos can become that ecosystem enabler should they wish to put that effort into it, and this could be actually the way to achieve it. So finally, our message really is that when we see the strategies that the telcos are willing to take, and that when we see where AI is here, we see those two pillars that we mentioned. So the AI for telco, can help on several areas that are going to help within the organization. They will help to continue the innovation. They will help on sustainability, which is extremely important, but they will help on bringing together all of those pillars that we spoke at the beginning. So mentioning those pillars was really important, so we know that they're top of mind for everyone here, of course, the working groups that we have. And so we think that those are our learnings, and we're very happy to be here, and thank you for Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jorge. And I think it's also good to see that we have now also AI as a technology to move from a connectivity provider to a full service provider, so going higher in the value chain, possibly entering other verticals. So we have in several working groups the future of telco stream. So it will be very interesting also to see whether AI can help to move into these other verticals. As we know, it's easier said than done. Operators do not want to become a dumb bit pipe, and they want to move higher in the value chain. So perhaps AI can help to achieve that. So there is also, as usual, a regulation related to new technology. So I'm very happy now to present Michal to the stage from O2 Czech Republic, who will give his view on what the AI Act is and is not. And get your phones also ready. We will get some interaction again via poll.
Can I get the time? Or is there? Oh, we are already 1 minute in my talk, I can see. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Michal Kubista. I'm the head of data and platform, formerly head of data science at DataClaire. We'll start with short introduction what the hell DataClaire is. Probably you never heard about it. And then we'll go into the topic. So what is DataClaire? We are a center of artificial intelligence in O2 Czech Republic. Now, unlike other O2s, the one in Czech Republic is not owned by Telefonica, it's owned by a local investment group called PPF. That's why we have our own center of artificial intelligence. We have our own branding while being just a department of the O2 Czech Republic because we are doing some external products as well. You can find our website here. What we are working on is, I'll say two things. One is data monetization, which is the three pillars on the right. These are some products that we are even offering, so you can see details on the websites. Unfortunately, they are in Czech Republic because it's Czech data for the Czech businesses. You would need to use some translator tool. I was asked to present some of our big bets, some of the big projects we are working on recently, and these are on the left-hand side. They are on the internal optimization of the processes within the O2 Czech Republic. So the two big bets we have is the customer experience, and this is all about the first-time resolution of the problems and, in general, the quality of the service and support we can offer to our customers. And we are developing a broad suite of tools, some including LLMs and other technologies. Since it's in the DataClaire space, in the AI space, it's typically using some kind of intelligence. The second part is the network, and there are two streams there. One is about the network experience. Are the customers happy with the quality of the phone service, with the quality of the connection, and similar things? The second is about the smart CapEx. Smart CapEx is all about where to build the new infrastructure, where to upgrade, and where to do these kind of activities. And just to show you the alignment with the O2, O2 has this mission. I'll just quickly go through. And it's not just our big bets. These are the big bets for O2 Czech Republic as well. So you have the network things on the left-hand side. These are part of the technology for the people, and the customer experience projects in DataClaire are part of the customer experience in digital services and organization. So these are the big projects we are working on right now, and we've been working on for the last year and a half, let's say. So going to the topic that I actually came here to present, I'll show you several of these statements, and I would like to ask you to scan the QR code now. And I'll ask you to always say about these statements if you agree or disagree. There should be just these two options. Now, there are no wrong or right answers. This is just about the opinion. And I'll need to go actually quite quickly through these because we'll come back to them. So, you know, just the first feeling, the first gut feeling is okay. This is the first statement that I'll have here. I use LLMs to look for new information, so feel free to answer that. And I'll start with the AI Act. I'll always say a few words or a few sentences about these statements to give you a bit more of the context. So, AI Act. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to go into too many details, and I don't want to present some information that you can find in a few minutes on the internet. So I want to talk about some of the things I heard, saw, or read, some of the common sentiments that I feel are being shared on the internet, and I want to share my opinion on those. From the position of someone who is not a lawyer, but someone who's a data scientist, someone who has hands-on experience with building these projects that might be regulated, and as someone who spent a great part of his capacity in the last 2 years following the developments, participating in the request for comments and similar activities, and actually reading the whole paper several times because there are 8 versions before the first and the final. So let's go to the statements. The first one is about EU regulating. So I'd like to ask you to now think about this. It can be EU regulating too soon, being too strong, too strict, too wide, whatever of these speak to you, whatever you agree with here. If it's risk to the innovations, to our competitiveness, in that case, please hit agree. And I'll go to the next one. So this is your last option actually to load the QR code now. The second statement I would like to ask you to think about is whether we actually can regulate the AI. Because, you know, if I had this talk 2 years ago, we wouldn't know what ChatGPT is. So this is something that took the world by the storm. It's something very new, and this area of the generative AI is being developed and is changing every day. So is it even something that we can sufficiently describe so we can do some kind of regulation? The next one is about the AI Act trying to regulate the technology. And now in this case, it's kind of connected to the previous point. So if the AI is developing so fast, is the AI Act actually able to keep track? Are our policymakers able to align with the quick developments? Are they able to keep AI Act relevant for the next few years? The fourth one is about the final text. So we now have the final text. We can read the whole thing. It's like 300 pages, something like that. Do we have all we need? Do you think that we have all the prescriptions to how we should comply with the regulation? Is there something missing? Or do we have all we need to get started today? And the final one is that everybody will need to somehow comply with the AI Act, or not everybody, maybe majority, maybe not majority, but a lot of different subjects. So this is about the scope of the AI Act. Do you think that this was something that a lot of us will need to go very deep into, or is it something that we'll just need to, keep in the corner of our eye and we can just keep doing what we do? So all of the 5 statements, I'll give you a few more seconds, and we'll go into the results. Can we switch? Oh, okay, I can see. So, a lot of you is using LLMs. Regulate, too soon, disagree, okay. We can't regulate, disagree, okay. AI Act regulates the technology, okay. Final text, we disagree, nice. Majority will fall, okay. So, thank you for these. The results are nice, but what it made, what it made you is build some mental model and think about these things. So now you can internally argue with me as I go through my opinion on these statements. So let's go back to the presentation. EU regulates too soon. So I'm not sure about the second part about the stifling innovations, but it's not just about the European Union. And this is very important because on the left-hand side, you can see the number of AI regulations in the last 7 years. And you can see that actually US is leading. Of course, US is taking a very different approach. China is taking a very different approach. Other countries are taking a different approach. But this is a thing that everybody is thinking about now. How to ensure that the AI will be used for good and not for hurting the fundamental rights of the people and other similar things. On the right-hand side, you can see that the number of mentions of AI in non-AI aligned regulations. So it's not just about the laws that are concerning the AI. It's about all the other laws that need to take some stance on the AI. Okay, copyright, GDPR is the obvious things, but there are a lot of these areas where we need to think about how the AI will affect this part. So I just want to change the narrative here a bit. It's not just about the EU, it's about the whole world. Everybody's thinking about it right now. And actually one of the reasons why EU started working on the AI Act is that certain countries within the European Union started thinking and talking about how they could regulate the AI. And the EU Council said, okay, we need to do some standardization here to ensure that the market doesn't get any more fragmented than it already is. So we need some standard approach across the whole European Union, and the result is now the AI Act. We can't regulate the AI, it evolves too fast. So I think this was mostly disagreement, if I'm not wrong. Sorry if I am. I agree here. Because the developments we have seen in the last 2 years have been extremely fast. AI became something that now everybody is aware of. 3 years ago, it was this like strange concept that lived on the street somewhere. Some companies claim they do it. That's all. Now every single person, or almost every single person, I dare to say, knows about ChatGPT. Maybe they have used it. So this is something that's changed completely. And even now, the speed of the evolution is very fast. And I don't think anybody is able to predict where we will be in maybe 2 to 5 years. And you know, the AI Act is only getting ready in 2 years. That's when the full scale will be applied. So we have no idea where we will get here. Which leads me to this question. So is the AI Act doomed to fail before even starting? And this is where I get a bit nitpicky, and I'm sorry about that. But AI Act doesn't aim to regulate the technology. It's regulating the use cases. And now the lawyers will excuse me if I make some mistakes here, but this is based on product safety framework. So this is not about what technologies and approaches you'll take. It's about what you use it for, okay? And I'm sharing a few pieces of the text from the AI Act here to show you it always talks about the AI system and how the system will be used. And that's a great difference. Because, for example, let's take ChatGPT. You want to use ChatGPT for something, all right? Nobody cares. If it's not risky, nobody cares. So you want to make it your personal assistant. Well, unless you missing your appointments will endanger the safety and health of the citizens of the European Union, you are okay. However, let's take other extreme case. You want to make ChatGPT an interface between a surgeon and a surgical robot. Should you do it? Well, even without the regulation, I would say you shouldn't do it, because you need to be able to explain how the system works, and you need to have some guidelines. But the LLMs are inherently chaotic system. The outputs change greatly with some small input to the internal state, and we can't even observe the internal state. And you can see this example took me a few seconds to generate, and sometimes the ChatGPT will respond with the correct definition of pi. Sometimes it will say something completely nonsense. So it's very hard to argue about how the system is working, how it's supposed to work, if it's human overseeable or not, when you are using something so complicated that we have troubles to understand how it works in the first place, okay? The only way how you could make this work is if the ChatGPT would give you some outputs, some surgeon would review it and then feed it into the robot. And there is actually exception in the AI Act for this case, and it wouldn't be high risk anymore, but I'm not sure if it would be helpful in this case. So the AI Act is not trying to regulate the technology because it's evolving very fast, and even our policymakers understand that. It's trying to regulate the use cases, and the use cases still live within the physical space, and it's something that can be understood. It's still about protecting the safety, health, and the fundamental rights of the citizens here. The next part is about the final text. So with the final text, do we have all we need? I would say we don't. I would say we have the aspirations, and this is very similar to maybe what you saw in GDPR. You have the things that you want to achieve somehow, but it will not tell you how or what is even understood as correct or incorrect. So these are some pieces from the AI Act again, and you can see that the data set should be relevant and free of errors. And the system should be designed in a way that they can be overseen by natural persons. And the system should have appropriate level of accuracy. What is appropriate level of accuracy for credit risk system? Can anyone immediately answer that? Probably not. So what we are missing here is the standards. And this is area that is being very actively worked on. Here in Czech Republic, I know that PwC, the responsible AI team, is working on these as well with other organizations, with ISO certifications and all of these. These standards will shape the final form of the regulation more than the text itself, out there to say. Because these standards will tell us how can we fulfill the requirements in a way that the accuracy is enough or not. So this is kind of a low point in my presentation here, because we have the regulation, but it's not telling us much, right? We don't really know what to do right now. I have the sweet spot for the next slide, something that will loosen the impact here, hopefully. The majority of AI systems will not fall under the AI Act. So we have this risk-based tiered approach. First, we have the unacceptable risk. Unacceptable risk is surprisingly a lot of things inspired by China. So you have the social scoring, facial recognition, remote biometric identification, similar things. Now, if you are working on such a use cases, I would dare to say you might have taken some questionable decisions in the past. These are not the typical things you'd like to see in a telco. It's something very specific. The second tier is the high risk. And these are the systems that can harm the health, safety, or fundamental rights of the citizens in EU. Now, for example, imagine an employment AI system. So you'll have hiring assistant. This assistant will help see the prospects and filter out the good ones and the bad ones and remove the bad ones. This system can be only as good as the data you train it on. So if you had some recruiter who was systematically biased against females, you'll have a lot of training data where the females would be rejected. This is the training data for your model, and your model will just learn the relations in the data. So the model will not de-bias the process. It will just scale it up and make it more systematic. And this is something that the AI Act is trying to prevent. It's saying that if you are using such a system, you need to prove that you are training it on some relevant, non-biased data. You need to prove that it's working well. You need to prove that it's not discriminating against specific groups and similar things. By the way, this is not an imaginary example. This is something that happened to Amazon when they tried to train their ML model in the recruiting, into the recruiting process, and this was exactly the result they got. The PR they received was not very good as well. So there are some high-risk systems. I would dare to say that it's only a very small minority of what you might be working on. In our case, we have one use case which might be high risk, and even there we are not completely sure. And the risk is in the rest. So in the rest, you have limited risk, and this is where users are interacting with some AI-generated outputs from chatbots, from image generators, similar things. They need to be made aware that they are seeing some AI-generated things, so they can't be manipulated or they are aware. So that's just when you are using Gen AI, basically. Finally, you have the rest. You have just voluntary code of conduct, and this is where the grand majority of everything should be. And if you are there, you don't need to worry. Okay? Basically, you should still worry. So while we are still waiting for the standards we need mostly for the high risk. For the rest, we just need to understand what AI use cases we have in the house today, and if some of them are being at risk of being high-risk AI system. Now, admittedly, if you have the high-risk use case, you'll need to do a lot of paperwork. You don't need to read through this. I have just the source to the FLE. You have the orange things. These are the general requirements. The green things are the sub-requirements. The yellow is the things you need to document. You need to keep the documentation for 10 years, I think. The blue things is that you need to register your use case somewhere in the European database, okay? It's a lot of things. However, I would expect that the standards would help us cluster a lot of these requirements together because there's a lot of overlap between some of these articles, and this is just article-based. One thing that is still missing here is foundation models. And this is the specific case where we don't do the risk approach, but we have some like blanket approach to these foundation models. Foundation models are called GPAI, General Purpose AI Systems, in the AI Act. And these are models that are trained on a lot of data and can be used for a lot of downstream use cases. Now, we have several separations here. First is models with systemic risk, and the second is base models. The models with systemic risk, one of the defining factor is the amount of compute used to train these models, measured in floating operations. The amount of floating operations here, for example, this would be GPT-4. For the base models, this would be GPT 3.5, the original ChatGPT. Okay? So unless you want to burn a few $1 billion on training a huge new LLM, you'll be on the left-hand side. If you want to build something smaller, something domain-specific, you'll be on the left-hand side. And on the left-hand side, you can see that it's mostly about understanding the information you are training the models on. Now, there's a lot of discussion around protecting the content makers, the newspaper and similar subjects that are generating the content that the LLMs are trained on. For me, this is not just about them. It's about your data that you put on your website, for example. Imagine that some model is trained on your own old price lists. You will upgrade them, but the people, and a lot of you, are using LLMs to search for information, and this number will be likely growing. So the LLM will give them untruth information. How do you defend against that if you can't prove that the company used your data to train it on? So this is about making sure that the companies need to disclose, at least on some level, on what data they trained on, so you can protect your copyright, even for your own websites, not just about the art and news and stuff like that. Okay, I'm getting out of the time, so I'll skip the two things, regulatory distortions. If you are interested in how I predict the AI can distort the market, we can talk about it on the roundtable. And I'll just finish with what can you do today to start preparing. We don't have the standards, we don't understand everything, but what you can do today is start documenting the use cases you already have running, the things you are work in progress, and the things that you are planning. And for these things, try to understand if there is any risk of these use cases being understood as high risk. And if yes, you need to think about if your business case is strong enough to handle the additional pressure of the regulatory compliance costs. If you are not sure, maybe just put them on hold. But still, I would expect that these will be like single cases out of many. The second thing is think about if you are trying to train some GPA models, some foundation models. And if yes, just make sure that you document what data you used, and you will be 90% ready for all that is coming. So it's just about mapping what you are doing and what you are trying to do, doing the documentation. Unfortunately, the AI still can't do that for you, understanding what the other departments in your company is doing, but it's just about this understanding. This will help you prepare once we know more. Right, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Michal, and I think just like we did for GDPR and CSRD, we will continue discussions in the relevant working groups related to the AI Act, but thanks for the very good overview and personal opinion on the AI Act. And now it's time to talk about money, I think, before we start the roundtable. So where are the opportunities with AI in a telco? We're very happy to have an AI analyst who did a lot of research on where the AI can bring value to operators, in which processes is it best to focus on. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much for having me. I wanted to share some of my findings from a couple of different pieces of research that I've been doing. I work in the area of intelligent automation, and as an analyst, I'd just like to define my terms and say that I'm talking here about a mix of AI, machine learning, analytics, and automation. And so, let me just move on. So as an industry analyst, I've been interested in the financial value that intelligent automation could generate in a telco, and I've been cultivating a model for about the last 10 years. And I do apologize, in that time I have never managed to find a way to show a summary of my findings which wasn't incredibly complicated. And I just wanted to say that I'm sending out by email, or Wim is sending out by email, a copy of this and some other discussion slides so that you've got it and you don't have to ruin your eyesight by staring at my diagram. The diagram shows a summary of my calculations on the value of intelligent automation for an average telco. And to give you some idea of the methodology, I've got an ongoing spreadsheeting exercise which breaks down a typical telco into 250 of its largest processes and considers where intelligent automation is likely to bring benefits in future. And the exercise then calculates what this might mean in terms of financial value, so that's revenue uplift or CapEx, OpEx decreases. And describing the structure of the diagram, I'm hoping that the columns are self-explanatory. And then as I went through my processes and the use cases, I began to notice that similar types of problem needing to be solved, popping up in different places in the telco, and that these problems then needed the same types of solutions from intelligent automation. So my diagram is divided into 6 rows with similar problem-solution combinations. First row, this is the processes that are classic big data problems. Analytics and machine learning are needed to underpin large, mostly structured data sets, looking for patterns to diagnose problems, etc., etc. Then the next row is grouping of those processes which are most in need of automation. So they tend to be relatively large teams doing somewhat repetitive tasks. Row 3 is about understanding customers and indeed employees in order to better group them, and I call those personalization. We've got classic planning problems in row 4. Row 5 and row 6 include use cases which might include what sort of proper AI, should we say. So row 5 is about humans and machines interacting, so you've got some Gen AI coming in there. And then row 6 is a range of what I call point solutions. So we're talking here about mostly newer types of AI to underpin a single task. So we're talking about drones looking for faults on cell towers, or Gen AI for creation of content in marketing, those sorts of problems. And just to be clear on the different colors of the boxes, these are an average yearly financial value calculated for adding intelligent automation. Those in pink, over $50 million a year, only a few of them, and going through them quickly. Obviously, network management is much the largest area of potential value. It reduces staff costs, it optimizes expensive equipment, and also spectrum costs. And then assurance, this is the push towards a self-healing network, again, reducing CapEx and OpEx, improving customer experience. Network planning, there the opportunity for large problems which may reduce CapEx and OpEx. And then field services, so you've got large teams where automation and intelligence can bring opportunities to optimize headcount, the amount of hours needed for traveling and so on and so forth. So those are my big ones. And then looking also at some of the other areas in blue, which are between 10 and 50 million in yearly value. You've got channel columns, so there are opportunities to understand customers better there and to use some analytics and some machine learning. Dollar value is considerably less than on the network side, according to my calculations. There are, just because although many of the projects do bring efficiencies into large teams, the financial value is just nothing like as big as reducing OpEx and CapEx on the network side. There's then marketing. There we've got things like campaign management been going on for some time, but I still consider there to be more value to be taken there. And then I heard in recent discussions about looking to other verticals, such as software for new inspirations in the marketing place, for more sort of different kinds of campaign optimization. So I think that's going to continue to be interesting. So, to summarize, my calculations are based on a telco with a revenue of $16 billion a year, and looking across the diagram, I estimate a 1.2 billion uplift to the bottom line per year from all known intelligent automation projects. Some of them have been completed already, and some of them are still to come in the next 5 years. Now, I'm hoping that that was all understandable. I'd like to move on and look at the progress to date. And so, I'm going to focus more towards network and operations because there's just such a lot more of the financial value there, and about 80% of the complexity and headaches I would calculate as well. And in some recent research into the progress of intelligent automation, I was speaking with vendors involved in deployments, and I started to notice that they were using particular phrases that were very kind of descriptive, I guess. And sometimes these phrases were used more than once. And I realized that this was the vendors trying to articulate the difficulties of automating a telco without actually telling an analyst that they were finding it difficult. So, I present a summary of the progress of automation in telcos in 4 phrases for you. First of all, automation is a journey. Translation, automation is difficult but necessary. Random acts of automation. Most telcos currently lack a really disciplined automation strategy. You know who you are. Byzantine and unusable. Significant technical and organizational complexities inside the telco that act as barriers to speedy deployment. And then lots of standards to choose from. It's going to be really difficult to automate in a multi-vendor environment. Don't know how you guys feel about that. So, where are we in the push towards an automated telco? Another diagram, but less things on this diagram. This graph summarizes what intelligent automation has typically been deployed in the network and in larger operational teams, and what remains to be deployed. The y-axis shows kind of roughly my assumptions of cumulative financial upside to the telco, and then over time on the x-axis. And you'll see that I have my chasm of complexity, which is somewhere between level 2 and level 3 on the TM Forum autonomous network model. And just to clarify for those who are not network experts, level 2 is a kind of rules-based automation, typically in a single domain, might include some machine learning, but relatively easy to deploy. Level 3 is closed-loop automations with a more real-time awareness of environmental change. It includes use of intent and deployment of orchestration to allow actions to be taken. And I was speaking to a large European telco last week, and they said, look, we've nearly completed level 2, but the lack of orchestration capabilities is holding us back from level 3. And I generally note that trying to move to level 3 is seeing the telcos feeling it's quite often, it's not worth retrofitting automations into the previous Gs or the previous technologies in the network. So when we're talking about orchestration and moving to level 3 on the radio network, say, we're mostly talking here about 5G. Then, I think a reasonably sophisticated to pretty sophisticated telcos are just entering the chasm, and I will describe that in a little more detail. Then I would say that those who are really the most far forward are probably knee-deep in the chasm somewhere. And again, decision-making here is interesting. I was speaking to a Chinese vendor the other day who said that their large Chinese telco customer, who would obviously be very far forward in this process, was choosing a single vendor strategy in each network domain to make their lives easier. So, we're having to choose between multi-vendor and progressing through the chasm and progressing on towards automation, which seems sensible and kind of that's what I imagined might happen. So interesting to see people sort of actively speaking about this. I don't have time to go through every dot, so I'm going to start with cloud automation and say that this is a difficult piece of my model. 4 or 5 years ago, there was pieces of work coming out from the consultancies who said there were going to be big value from virtualizing, and then this was not what happened. And I would like to complain about consultants bearing spreadsheets, except that I am a consultant bearing a spreadsheet, so I do actually know how they feel. Having said this, the VP of Software Engineering Orange, speaking to him a couple of weeks ago, most important thing we need to do, he says, is to underpin future intelligent automations, is to virtualize. And I've recently finished some research for TM Forum on cloud economics, and we asked in a survey, how confident are you in managing your cloud costs? 80% said we are getting confident with the skill sets we need. So it looks like that one of the major barriers to cost savings is being resolved, which is good news, I guess. Service orchestration, so a single process for customer fulfillment. We're going here from order handling, service design to provisioning of the service, and then the network resources needed. This is a change in telco focus from cost savings towards generating revenues, so kind of one of the big shifts in automations. And real movement here. I was speaking with somebody from the strategy team at Colt, and he said that this was the product he was most proud of was his service orchestration product. His customers can order any circuit they want, and if there is connection and capacity, we'll deliver it almost immediately. So that sounded like good movement, I thought. Moving to the chasm, well, what is the chasm? So first of all, it's the move from level 2 to kind of level 3-ish. It requires a lot of work, the reworking of processes, quality data, standards. You guys, I'm sure, are knee-deep in this. And I don't know quite how controversial my view is here, but I calculate that the various areas of automation that I've just talked through, which are kind of below this chasm, will actually represent 2/3 of the total financial value from intelligent automation. The biggest unknown about the rest of the value for those things above the chasm is how much revenue you believe a telco can make from new services, because a lot of the value above the chasm will be generated by successfully selling new services. Do I think it is kind of this big and should be, somewhere on the floor above, or do I think it's kind of this big and this is too much value? I'm not quite sure. I've been quite pragmatic, I think, after many years of tracking the ability of telcos to generate new service revenues. And then lastly, I wanted to talk briefly about self-healing because this is probably the most complex part of network automations. On the one hand, I've been writing about this recently, and someone I interviewed said, Charlotte, he said, sad reality is that many problems can be fixed by just turning something off and turning it on again. And I thought, well, that's not going to make a very interesting research note. Nobody needs to read that. But then, when you get down into the detail, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is just how, I don't know how anybody's going to do this. You know, you've got to monitor, diagnose, and resolve at every level and every domain. If you're going to do this proactively, you have to predict things accurately. And you've got to deal with the problems of conflict and compromise if you've got multiple intents. And this is just, feels like it's going to be a lot of work. And so, my final slide is talking through a couple of changes, 3 changes that I think the telcos need to do to take hold of this financial value and to kind of push them through the automation lifecycle. So, there's a lot I could be talking about here. I could be well over the coffee break. So prioritizing. The recent surveys I've been looking at, asking telcos what issues are holding them back, tend towards 3 barriers. So first of all, top-level strategy, but basically just a lack of clear vision about where we're going with intelligent automation. Technology issues then, so particularly lack of budget, obviously, and legacy, a big problem potentially. And then people-related issues, so culture, organization, and skills, probably feels quite like, you know, see a lot written about all 3 of them. And I wanted to pick up on 3 things in these areas. So, despite presenting on financial value earlier in my presentation, really we need a blend of measures when creating a roadmap to prioritize the extremely large amount of potential projects. So this blend of measures should include top-line company goals, stretch goals like revenue streams, sustainability goals, obviously, particularly when we're talking about LLMs, complexity reduction goals. So technical debt avoidance, how are we going to stop, if at all possible, what has happened in the past? And then also big picture automation goals, which will need a lot of coordinated work. There may be things that don't make financial sense, but they just need to be done. How are we going to get to level 4 and 5? Also, if we're going to go for closed-loop intelligent automations, these need closed-loop goals. And there's a real need to look back on finished projects. Not only did the project meet its goals, but were the goals the correct goals, given the rapidly changing nature of the automation environment? Did the project provide any unexpected benefits to other automations? And can this success be replicated elsewhere? Are there knock-on effects that need to be considered and then replicated? And were all users satisfied with the outcome? Very important, obviously. Secondly, making bets on technology. I'm aware that I haven't mentioned Gen AI much. I've been to a few conferences and everybody mentions Gen AI, but I'd like to bring it up now. And I think it's a very visible example of the appearance of new technology and its progress on the hype curve. So it's a good example of what good and bad decision-making around a new intelligence look like. And I have a mental list of potential questions that should be asked up front when some sort of new technology appears on the scene, especially after the excitements of Gen AI and all the things it was going to do. And I'm just going to go through one of them for you. One of my questions is, what is this new technology's place within the complete landscape of all intelligent automations? Despite the early hype, Gen AI is not the best tool for every job. What is it going to be used for? I've got mostly categorized down into kind of 3 things in my mind. Human-to-machine interactions, so digital assistants, chatbots. Creation and maintenance of documentation. And as noted by somebody at interview the other day, Gen AI is about dynamicity and not creativity. So it's about code creation and creating triggers on a dynamic network, and it is not about creating a more creative network, because who needs more creativity in their network? I'm not sure. But so not very, but what is it not good at? Well, despite what was talked about, it's not hugely good at maths, it's not very good at prediction, and it's not very good at anomaly detection. There are places where it can, but it's probably not the best model to do so. So we've seen a lot of excited discussions over the last year where people are talking about what Gen AI is going to be used for, but which were not hugely helpful in moving the decision-making forward. So my question is to be asked right at the beginning of any new technology that we see just about to appear. And then 3, creating a culture to support intelligence. So I'm coming into land with a few comments around culture building. When speaking off the record at interview, people highlighted their frustrations with the conservative nature of telcos. Who knew? It was felt that excuses were being made around GDPR, budget constraints, and lack of human resources for doing more in the intelligent automation space. They kind of felt that all 3 of them were probably perfectly solvable, but then they might not be holding the purse strings potentially. So a useful exercise may be to create a set of topics for debate, not only by leadership, but across the organization to build understanding about where we're going in future. And to really make sure that we have, the best questions top of mind when we are looking at what we might do next. 3 questions. What are our expectations about how intelligence will impact the organization into the longer term? Building a really far-reaching common understanding is difficult, but it will allow people to discuss their concerns, and it will also allow new trends to be looked at and to be considered. And I have some real fun doing that myself. It's a really interesting topic. And what are the biggest potential benefits to the company of using intelligence, and what are the biggest pitfalls? So obviously this is an ordinary one. Of course you're going to talk about that, but it allows those who have a vision for intelligent automation to really articulate the benefits to everybody, but also for everybody else to talk about the hard problems and how that's going to be dealt with. And then lastly, are there any particular known unknowns that might cause real issues in the near future, but are not on the radar of absolutely everybody in the company? This is really a risk management discussion, and maybe this is more of a top-level management discussion, but it just allows a general understanding of the biggest issues, whether it's regulatory, as we were hearing before, customer experience, brand impacts, those sort of things. They're the sorts of things that probably should be discussed at all levels. And so thank you very much for your time listening. I hope that was of interest to you in some way.
Thank you, Charlotte, for giving a lot of food for thought, I would say. It's a bit early for lunch, so we will do it in a different way. We will have a roundtable discussion, so I would like to ask the speakers to grab a chair and to come on stage. We will first address 2 topics ourselves, and then we will go in a Q&A with you. We will keep the first part very brief. Okay, thank you. And so while we are getting ready, just some extra slides. There are only 3 left to show. But I think, and thanks Michal for pointing out to the document of the AI Index, a very interesting document published by an American university with a lot of data on AI. We will share the link. But there are some interesting graphs, and I've just selected 2. So if we look at how Europe is embracing AI, and we just look at the financials again, we see that, for instance, in 2023 in the US, there was an investment of almost $70 billion in AI-related activities, whereas in Europe we're around 11, so it's 6 times less. The next one showing then, I think, also the impact of that is that in the US there were 109 foundation models created. In Europe there were 15. So a first question we want to address is, okay, is Europe lagging? Is the AI Act helping or stifling innovation? What is the view of the panel on it? Jukka, you can go first, so let's keep the interactions short, but give your view.
Well, I think we are like mentally lagging behind. We are doing like the catch-up follow-up on what is happening on Silicon Valley and China instead of playing on our own strengths. So like we should be actually looking at the areas where we can be strong and pushing the innovations on those areas instead of just looking what's happening elsewhere and trying to regulate those.
Okay, clear. Michal?
So I think we are quite lucky we have the UK together with the European Union here, so it doesn't look so bad as far as I'm aware. United Kingdom is actually trying to do something. I think that in the EU we are kind of not working very well with the capital market. So when you want to make money and you want to sell part of your company or maybe take it down because it's no longer profitable, in EU we would view that thing completely differently to how somebody would view it in the US. In US it's really about generating the profit to the stakeholders, and that profit of course makes a lot of people rich, but it generates more and more money in this area of investment into the startups and similar things. In EU we are kind of lacking in this, like flywheel of generating more money and funding more innovation. So I think that's one of our problems.
Okay, Jorge?
Yeah, so from my view is that we should look at our market, so the European market, see what actually works for us, but always keep an eye on anything that is happening as a reference, just like we did comparing other evolution of ecosystems. But yeah, in this case, basically that's what we think we should focus on our local market, see what works for us, and then.
Okay, Charlotte?
Yeah, I feel similarly that if we are to be fast followers, it sounds like I see a balance between those who are enthusiastic about foundation models and those who are enthusiastic about much smaller models that are specific to a vertical and a use case. I think we're probably our niche will be vertical specific use cases that are actually useful for local companies.
Paul?
Yeah, what should I add? I think that the picture is clear. Most of us are probably using things like Copilot. We all know the company where it's coming from. So yeah, this is our life, and investment is heavily in the United States. A bit surprised actually about the position of China. I would have expected that to be higher in the ranking, because I'm used to looking at pictures showing Chinese technology vendors and their spend on R&D, which is more than the R&D spend of anyone else altogether. Yeah. So just wondering, okay, is it correct? But let's trust the data. So that's a bit of surprise.
Okay, thanks for the answers, and a more fun. The picture is fun, perhaps the consequence not. If you just read it, I think AI will also, for the first time, as an industrial revolution, automate creative work, white-collar work. I think the previous industrial revolutions automated manual work. So now it's also going to impact, I guess, most of the job of the people here in the room. So I think you can, again, like ChatGPT to build your building, like Paul has shown on his picture when he started his presentation, but it's not very likely it will happen. So it will impact our jobs, our companies also. I think we will also discuss the impact on the way to organize the companies, because the processes will change thanks to AI. So I think this is also a reality. So is there somebody of the panel who wants to give his view on this? Somebody disagrees with the statement?
Well, I can start. I think it will push the spread of the value of the white-collar work to really extremes, that the best individual people that are able to harness the AI get like really strong superpowers and they can achieve by themselves or with small teams things that were totally unimaginable few years ago, but then a big part of what was considered to be like a decent or even good performance of white collar work will become stuff that is essentially like a few minutes typing for something, and like the value add is like not that much more.
Yeah. Other views?
Yeah, maybe I can follow up. A few months ago, I was on O2 managerial conference here in Prague, and we were discussing a lot of the different use cases we are bringing as a data clear into O2. And after the presentations, we were kind of patting our own backs, like, yeah, the presentations went well and people were happy and everything. And then the guy who's responsible for the retail came to us and told us, you know, guys, you are so enthusiastic and everything, but there are people there, store managers, that are scared for their job, you know, and they are not very happy with what you are presenting. So I think this is this kind of sentiment is very widespread. Now, we actually have already a product based on LLMs in production, used for our agents on the call centers, on the retail stores and similar. And what we see is that the best performing agents, for them there's very little change. But what we are able to do is we are able to match the performance of the newcomers and of the people who were struggling to in some regard or to some degree to the performance level of the best performers. So it's more about changing the like job description. It's about upskilling these people, but in the end, from what we see so far, is about matching the level and kind of standardizing the level across the base.
Charlotte?
I think I've been trying to think through what it might mean for kind of leadership and the introduction of more AI, because theoretically businesses could go an awful lot faster. You might be able to go into businesses that you could never have gone into before because you've got the help behind you to do that. What does that mean? What sort of skill sets? You know, how do you keep once ahead of the competition, and especially if the competition kind of expands greatly? So I think that's really interesting.
Maybe to add to that, Wim, we had a look at it within KPN. I actually said, okay, there's a potential impact, and like you did show, the level 2, and then the step up to level 3, there's a big change there. But if you take it beyond level 2, well, assuming that you got your light knock and things like that, then there will be a huge impact on, for instance, call center operation. We got a big call center, that's going to change. But also the level 2 assurance work is going to change. It's not just level 1, but also level 2. And our current estimates are about 30% of the work that will change there. So, but then you have to get to the second layer of your diagram, the level 3.
Okay, Jorge, you want to conclude?
Yeah, so in this specific question, and going back to the fundamentals of our jobs, and essentially us being not needed in one task. So we have an experience that is always shared by one of our executives, which is for example, the chain of food, McDonald's, having an improvement in their process. So it's all about improving processes. So if the drive-through becomes more efficient, you have less hands there sorting out. So there are several things that can be done, but let's just picture this. So if you know you can sort out the orders more quickly, you can automate those things, there are less errors. So you release people, absolutely on that. But those people can do other things. And there I totally agree with Michal that then you can upscale those skills, and basically those people can create a better experience in the restaurant with a more face-to-face. So ideally, that could be the reality, but certainly we don't know what is going to happen or to what level that can.
Okay, let's discuss that also further the next 2 days. Time for some questions from the audience. Who think we have a question?
Hi, thanks a lot for a nice discussion. Daniel Dobosch, Research Director from Swisscom. I'd like to connect basically Charlotte and Michael. You nicely showed us that smart networks have the highest business value on one side. On the other side, if I understood correctly, Michael, They are also most critical in terms of regulation and cost for compliance. When we talk about critical infrastructure, that our connectivity is, and that we're now connecting AI to it. Do I see this correctly, that this is basically, the turf to work on, but it's also a difficult field?
Should I start?
Yes, the thing that gets me about the network is how difficult it gets once you get past the very basic automations, and that's where customer experience, adding too much intelligence has a issue for customer experience. So yeah, I would agree with you about that. There's the value, but also the risk as well. Yeah.
And from the regulation point of view, the critical digital infrastructure is mentioned as a high-risk use case with some conditions. It really depends on what you want to do. So if you want to create a system that will help you monitor, I think that's okay. It's not hurting the health, safety, or the fundamental rights. If you want to create a system that will be able maybe to restart some elements of your infrastructure based on some identified problems, unless you keep it, if you keep it small scale, once again, I don't think it will go into this high-risk category. And this is where the text is not entirely clear. We have these aspirations, but we'll need to have much more in terms of interpretations and core decisions even to understand some of these implications. But yes, if you want to create some system that will manage the network for you, you better be sure that it will not take down the whole network, even because you want to do that. You don't want to turn off your whole network. But now the AI will actually tell you which things you should focus on, and that if you do so, you'll be liable for fines under more regulations than before.
Okay, let's have another question. Perhaps just wait for the mic.
So in the previous questions, you discussed a lot about the employees needing upskilling for the roles that will be replaced. Do you feel that in the telco space, where revenues are under pressure, that upskilling will be invested in, or that there will be a move for financial optimization?
I think that's a question for the operators, I think.
Well, in our case, last 15 years, the headcount in general has been increasing, but headcount on the operations has been decreasing. But the profiles that are left in the operations are, let's say, more skilled items. And then while the overall headcount is increasing as a company, we are expanding to new areas. So the old things are done with less people, more effectively, more skilled people, but all in all, there are growth opportunities than elsewhere.
As well as I'm aware, in O2C that there are no current plans to use the tools that we are creating to reduce the headcount. We are trying to go in the opposite direction and do more with the same amount of resources. So one of the things that our tool called Virtual Buddy should help the operators is limit the amount of work you spend on bug fixing and supporting the customers, spend more time in discussions around sales activities, revenue protection, and similar things, which are still somewhat deeply personal discussions about what is the need of the customer and similar. So we are already investing quite a lot of capacities into the upskilling. We have several upskilling programs. One is actually led by me. Others are distributed across the company. We have internal learning focusing on these AI basics right now. So there's a lot of capacities invested into this area.
Okay, Paul, you want to conclude?
Well, conclude, I'm not sure, but
on the question.
It's a big question and it's a fair question. But it's also part to another thing we're seeing, or it's related to another thing we're seeing, and that's changing population, changing work population. So reskilling and upskilling is a key component of what we're doing. And actually with every technology refresh, we're already spending a lot of money on education of people. Now it has to be more structured, but it comes as part of a strategy. We call it workforce management. But what's the future work population going to be? Because we got a lot of people going to retire. The inflow is a little bit limited. We got a problem, speaking for the Dutch market, with getting a good inflow from technology students, for instance. So it's a broader issue that we're seeing there. And it could be an interesting work group topic.
An HR group. Perhaps one last question?
Yes, good morning. Where do you see more successful use cases in the new revenue stream generation, so regarding new product and services that telcos can launch?
So which new revenue streams can AI generate? If you have to pick one, perhaps we can do... what do you think the most interesting one is?
I'm focused on the energy transition.
You already answered the question.
Yeah, I would like that one actually. But what we are focusing on right now is the fraud prevention and cybersecurity across the whole network.
From us, we're focusing on improving systems in general. So, for example, we had a project which is Smart City in Barcelona, and there are several systems that can be improved. Now, I cannot promise that the cities can be an enterprise that can capitalize that, but certainly they will need the services.
Okay, Charlotte. Besides the network one, where do you think? I think it was the right-hand side of your slide.
I don't know, there's just lots and lots of small opportunities. I've watched the data and analytics market, and because I obviously look at AI stuff, and there's just many, many small opportunities, and it's really, really difficult to make good money
big
there.
thing
I
yet.
don't know, I can't think of something. My mind's gone a blank.
It's time for a coffee in a second, so Paul?
I'm really bought in to also the idea that Elisa presented today, and that's about the what we call the smart energy systems. I think there's a huge opportunity where telcos can really make a difference in supplying that ecosystem or supporting that ecosystem.
Okay, very good, and that's also on the agenda of several of the working groups, so we'll go into more detail the next 2 days. So I want to thank the keynote speakers. And I know that you're all dying for a refreshment or a coffee, but we still have some housekeeping rules we want to mention so that you don't get lost here in the building or even worse in Prague. So as you know, we have within ETIS a very open communication line because we want to keep a trusted way of communicating. So it's important to keep the information you get within the community. Do not take it outside of your company unless you have the approval of the source. We have a mix of suppliers and operators. Some of the groups are meeting in a telco-only format. Sometimes the suppliers are invited to some of the sessions, so please respect also then where you can attend as a supplier and where not. Some people are in several working groups. If you're new and it's the first time you enter the group, please present yourself so that also the other people in the room know who you are, so that in case it's there is a competitor in the room, they at least know it. You can find all the agendas online. It's also, if you just scan the QR code on your badge, you immediately come to the agendas. Just click on the name of the working group. If you then click on the session, you will also see in which room the session is taking place. So yeah, some meeting rooms change is also part of the agenda, so it's a good thing to check it. You also will get an evaluation form tomorrow around noon. Please, it's this time digital at the request of the participants of last year. But please fill it out. It's very important for us to know where we can do better next time. And then important for tonight, we have 2 activities planned. We have first a sightseeing tour, guides will guide us through the city, but we will start in the center. So buses will take us to the starting point with the guides at 6:15. They will leave sharply at 6:30. And then we will have a second social event, which is the dinner sponsored by Lenovo+Intel, which is in a very nice restaurant with a view over the famous bridge in Prague. So you can have dinner while looking at the bridge. And we will also then conclude with a farewell reception tomorrow around 4. So hopefully you can stay for the farewell reception as well. So I think this one we have already seen. And I want to conclude with thanking my team. We're only 4 people organizing, in this case, 16 working group meetings. So it's a bit of a job, I would say, but I definitely would not be able to have done it without the support of Andrea, Ayush, and Ruxi. So I really want to thank the team for helping me to set this up. And the very last word is then a big thanks to the diamond sponsor Lenovo+Intel, the silver sponsor Comarch, and the partner Elisa. And now we can have a coffee. Have a good session.
Thank you.